I'm John Pomeranz. I am a managing director and run our fintech and financial services practice at TrueSearch. We are a challenger executive search firm, so we started about 12 years ago, and we're now the sixth largest executive search firm. I focus on serving fintech and financial services companies at the leadership level from a talent perspective, doing executive recruiting, primarily focused on CEO, board, COO searches, but also advise a lot of our clients on how to best think about transformation given the current landscape.
So on that note, what are people looking for? What kind of talent, what kind of caliber or profile are interesting right now?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think if you look at financial services from a holistic standpoint, the big public financial services brands are really focused on enterprise architecture at the moment. The role of the CIO has evolved a lot, and we're starting to see more put on the CIO. So think digital transformation, think AI. A lot of the things that are going on are kind of putting pressure on the CIO, and that's also kind of creating some mix between federated and non-federated, and how do you think about the physical infrastructure versus the cloud. Everybody made this big push towards cloud, and now some folks are pulling back and thinking about physical infrastructure again. So that's a big area that we're starting to see from a big financial services perspective. Also seeing a lot around data roles in general, thinking about new security roles like the CISO role and the importance of that organization. A little bit of a pull away from the typical kind of, hey, we want to go launch a new digital. Just because that is kind of starting to combine into all the business roles that these banks are doing. And if you think about the digital organization and AI, really it's entrenched in every hire now as these institutions are starting to think about what the future looks like. On the fintech side, I think, if you looked at the last 24 months, it was a huge uptick in CEO work. We saw almost every public fintech all the way down to private equity and venture-backed fintech do CEO changes. I mean, it was a drastic amount of CEO changes, and I think what drove that was just the change in the market. I mean, it's been up and to the right for so long, and when the market pulled back and there was a new focus around profitability, a new focus around regulatory, given some of the challenges that the fintechs faced, we started to see a push towards CEO replacement. And then now, that's decreased a little bit, and we're starting to see more demand in kind of product marketing, some of the other functional areas as they start to beef up and start to head towards growth again.
So these are some of the trends you're seeing right now. If you sort of take a step back and zoom out, would you say there's been any bigger changes the last, let's say, 5 years, or is it along these lines?
Yeah, I'd say like four things. One, I'd say corp dev and strategy has been a huge focus area. So some of these fintechs that have gotten to real scale have started to look at this buy, build, partner a little bit differently, and you've seen some consolidation already in the space recently. There's going to be way more consolidation, both on the private fintech side, public fintech side, and then even within some of the financial institutions. I think the second is profitability. So again, I think a lot of these organizations, they were just focused on growth expertise, right? And they were kind of deprioritizing the financial services experience as well in some cases, but with this new regulatory focus, and profitability focus, I think we're seeing a huge push on the profitability side. Integration that kind of goes along with the corporate strategy and development side, and then turnaround execs. I mean, there was a lot of challenged fintech companies out there in the venture space especially, but across private equity and some of the public fintech brands that they tried to launch. So we saw a big push around some turnaround executives as well.
And do you think that there are any gaps in terms of what the clients want to hire and the talent that's available? Is there any thoughts around?
Yeah, I think there's been a cultural divergence, right? So if you look at these large public financial services companies, the thought was, let's go hire from the FANGs, right? Let's bring on Google and Amazon talent because that'll help push the boundaries of who we are as an institution. And what we found now, 4 or 5 years later, some organizations have been doing it for even a little bit longer, is some of the cultural rejection because those organizations are so different. And so the conversation has really changed from, hey, let's just go hire from the most high-tech companies out there to what are the in-between companies? What is that incremental change? Who's along the journey further than us? but maybe not so far that they're going to be organ rejection from a cultural standpoint. And so we've definitely seen a push there. Now, some organizations are adopting AI, and really we're seeing the cultures of these banks and large cap financial services institutions changing, whereas others are still in real proof of concept phase. And so we're also seeing a cultural divergence at the large banks and at the large asset managers, because if you see the ones that are embracing versus the ones that aren't, they're looking for two different types of talent at this point.
You mentioned Gen AI. So what are you seeing in terms of reality and practice when it comes to how banks or financial services institutions are embracing Gen AI, and how is that reflecting in the roles they're hiring or the job specs maybe? Yeah,
I think for the organizations that are embracing it, and it's not all, I mean, I think everybody's talking about it, everybody's doing something, but there's a different version of that if you look at one bank to another in terms of where they're actually at with it. One anecdote I would tell you that I think is unique and interesting is the risk and compliance aspect. So we're seeing a big spike in risk and compliance roles that are geared towards internal use of AI, as well as kind of financial crime and other things that may be peripheralated by the fact that AI is starting to emerge. We're also starting to see at the operating committee and the executive committee of these organizations a focus on, first we saw digital transformation as an important characteristic of people that were going to move into the C-level. Now we see, that, but plus the AI experience as well.
And how are banks thinking about technical skills versus leadership skills? And, is one or the other more favored or more of a rarity, or can you get the two combined?
Yeah, there's this interesting paradox, right? Because if you have, look at financial technology, and listen, every bank now has to be a fintech in some way, shape, or form. And there's financial services experience, which is this regulated kind of, people leadership at scale, right? Where they still use technology, they are technology companies, but the type of technology and how far along they are with the technology and innovation, in some cases is not the same. If you look at technology companies broadly, there's a lot of companies that are on the emerging end of technology and kind of scaling. And when you put those two words together and you call it a fintech, the problem is how many organizations are truly financial technology companies at scale, and there's a short list. And so what organizations are starting to think about is, okay, what can you prioritize or where can you go? And so when we're seeing a lot of companies focus on looking at streaming services, we're seeing organizations look at gaming or other healthcare-oriented companies where there's still that same regulatory framework that they have to deal with, but at the same time they can actually have a bit more emerging on the technology side in terms of experience. I'd say that blended talent is really the far and few between right now, and finding those people that are the right cultural fit in the right function is where honestly leaders aren't hunting for jobs, they're mission hunting, to be honest, because they're so highly sought after that they really have the opportunity to do what they want.
So thinking again about the client perspective, the candidate's perspective, I suppose, what do you think will make them more successful? What kind of mindset or outlook or attitude will make them productive and efficient moving into a traditional financial services institution?
Yeah, I think the cultural piece is like one that I would just continue to focus on. The reality is, when you have these blended profiles, the experience in technology, the experience in financial services, the experience at scale, we look for value creation. So we look for people that have gone through similar journeys, even if it's in a tangential space, so maybe insurance or another area in financial services. But trying to find those people that have driven value. So if you're looking at EBITDA growth, if you're looking at top line growth, if you're looking at thinking about a business model change from traditional business model to a digital business model, all we continue to prioritize is somebody who can meet an organization where it's at today and help push them along that journey in a natural way by building relationships and understanding how the organization works. The folks that come in and try to drive too much change too fast and don't understand the politics and the kind of internal dialogues that are required are the ones that end up flaming out pretty quickly.
And staying on the candidate perspective, what kind of background do you think will lends itself the most to be successful in financial services today in terms of career progression opportunities?
If you look at the fintech CEOs as an example, there was a reality of most of the CEOs, whether you were a private equity firm or venture capital firm or even a bank, they were hiring was folks that had been a CEO before. So the experience was work your way up to the top, and then once you're at the top, you can move around to other top jobs. That's changed a lot. And so if you look at the CEO searches now that we do, a big margin of those are actually step-up CEOs, where they're coming from chief revenue officer roles, they're coming from business leadership, so being a general manager, running a P&L in a business. They're looking at even product as a function and technology as a function and finance and operations. So it's pretty broad where they look today, probably with CRO, if you're in the private space, is kind of the one that mostly moves into the CEO role. But I think that is changing quite a bit from a candidate perspective. So I do think that if you are a revenue leader that's owning the revenue, the marketing, the sales, the big question is, can you push into the other functions? So getting responsibility, managing operations or managing legal or finance or HR, or some of the other kind of internal functions will prove that ability to transition into that CEO role. But it's really about breadth overall. So we really focus and prioritize people to look for that P&L ownership, look for that breadth of kind of functional experience. That will really help you tap into that next leadership opportunity.
Is there anything we haven't covered so far that you think is worth highlighting today in regards to this discussion?
No, I'd say I think top digital talent, top AI talent, they're just really looking for a mission today. So our job is to make those introductions, but at the end of the day, organizations are going to be fighting for those candidates and making sure that you connect them to what's the big picture, what's the big vision today, and what are you trying to achieve.
Jonathan, thanks for your insight. Appreciate that.
Thank you very much.